Okay, with that, I will accept a motion to adjourn the business part of the meeting. Please raise your hand so I know who it is. Okay. All those in favor of adjourning the business part of the meeting signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? That is the end of the business meeting. At this point, Tom, you're probably going to want to take the head of the table there.
Okay. Where should I take it?
Right up to the front, if you'd like. Joining us this evening is someone you're all probably familiar with. It's Todd Ray. He is the EAS Coordinator. A little bit about Tom. Tom was part of, he's got a distinguished broadcast career. He was probably part of one of the first activations before there was even EAS. He was involved back in his WOR days with the first report of Martians landing at Grover's Mill, New Jersey, at which point the EAS was activated. Later on, he was part of the comedic team with Bob Elliott, which was Bob and Ray, and that was in the 60s. And today, though, he finds himself part of the New York State Broadcasters Association as their new EAS coordinator. So it's my pleasure to welcome from downstate, and if you didn't know, he's W2TRR, Todd Ray. Todd, thanks for coming out.
Thanks for having me, and I'll just tell you a little bit more. For the last 15 and a half years of my life, I was Director of Engineering for Buckley Broadcasting and Chief Engineer, Director of Engineering, and eventually also Operations Manager at WOR in New York City. I had the pleasure of taking the old girl and completely rebuilding her microphone to towers back 8 years ago. WOR was the first AM iBox station in the United States and the world, first high-power one. In addition, I've also worked at places like WTIC, WDRC, AM and FM in Hartford. I left WOR in February, started my own business, and in addition to doing some consulting and a little bit of contracting, I've got a couple of stations I contract for. I work with New York State Broadcasters Association as their EAS coordinator, and I also am the team lead on the ABIP program. I'm also I got some propaganda there, and if you need it, if you're looking at remote controls, I'm also a rep for Burke, so I brought up the literature, seeing as I had it in the car. And next week I'm picking up as rep for an audio codec manufacturer. I don't want to mention it yet because I don't want to steal their thunder. It hasn't been announced. So I've got a lot of things going on. Oh, I'm also the ham radio repeater coordinator for the state of New York through UNIREPCO for most of the state of New York. It's the largest territory in the country besides Texas. So I have a lot of things going on, and as part of EAS, what we found, and I don't have a big fancy presentation or anything, because I want to have a conversation tonight. And coming in, we found several things. I can tell you from the state of New York standpoint, and I'll reiterate, I'm here representing the Broadcasters Association. I'm not here as part of the state of New York. So, I'm from Albany and I'm here to help is actually a real phrase. It's not, something I run away from. We talked to the state of New York about 6 weeks ago and said, this CAP server, the one that, waves nicely whenever we poll it but never does anything. And they said, oh yeah, well, we have this issue where if we make it work for Sage, then it doesn't work for Trilithic. And if we make it work for Trilithic, then TFT has a problem. And it's like, time. First of all, FEMA just came out with a different standard, and it is a standard. It's XML. You got tags. If the tags are correct, and as far as audio, if the encapsulation information is correct to go find the file, it will do what it's supposed to. They said, gee, well, we're going to get right on it. We have a team of programmers, and I've been trying to get information ever since. So I don't know what the situation is right now with the New York CAP server. We're trying to find out. Very bluntly, it should be talking to the FEMA CAP server, so I'm not quite sure where this fits in, but we'll find out. We're also starting to rewrite the state plan. It needs to be updated desperately. And that's why I'm here, because there are some problems. I've been to Binghamton, I've been to Buffalo, I've been to Rochester today. And certain things came out that, need to be looked at, need to be adjusted. And I found that some people just didn't know who to talk to. Some people just kind of said, well, okay, this is how it is, and it doesn't work, so we'll leave it as such. And that's really not the right attitude. If you're looking for the person to talk to, well, I'm it. So if you have a problem, if you have a monitoring assignment issue, if you're monitoring somebody and they're not doing what they're supposed to, if your box isn't acting the way it should, but let's say Vinny has a box and it does exactly what it's supposed to, well, you can talk to me if you're having trouble with the manufacturer, and I'll put you in touch with the right people. And speaking of which, in case nobody caught it, Sage just came out with an update for their box. 89.5 is the latest. So if you haven't updated and you have a Sage, please do it. And we're looking to make, we're looking to make these adjustments and to make the state plan work for all of us. I'm not a bureaucrat who sits in an office. I get down and dirty with the best of them. Especially those couple of contract stations. Friday I'm going to be ripping out some remote control wiring at a station in Connecticut. So, this is what I do. I'm down in the trench. I don't pontificate from up high, and one thing I don't like to do is I don't like to dictate. You have to work with it, and you have to be comfortable with it. And this is a big state. What works in New York City doesn't necessarily work in Buffalo, doesn't necessarily work in Syracuse. We have to write a plan that kind of melds everything together, but we have to keep everybody's individual needs in mind. Propagation is different here than it is where I live for FM stations. It's different for AM stations here than it would be in New York City. One thing we did with New York City, we've got 5 LP1s in New York City, and then there's the city of New York. It makes it kind of convenient because an LP1 can originate an alert. All the LP1s get a daytime and a nighttime during a calendar year, as does the city. So we alternate, and we all start talking. And the day before a test, the LP1s get together on email, and everybody okay? You're supposed to do the test this month. Is your box working? Because we've had that issue. Okay, if the test doesn't come in 15 minutes, he's supposed to do it at such and such time. If it doesn't happen, can you pick it up? Yes, you can. Boom. That way, if your box locks up, we have a backup. We all talk about it. With the city of New York, the day before, we actually have them send a weekly test just to make sure we all get it, because that comes in on a phone line. Thank you. Reach out and touch. Never mind what you touch with the phone company. So, and if you need help doing things like this, that's why I'm around. If you need help with anything EAS, that's why I'm around, including the FCC. We've run into a couple of things recently. I'm not going to tell you where the station is or who the station is, but he said to me, he says, what if we can't hit the CAP server? I said, well, what do you mean if you can't hit the CAP server? Well, their corporate IT department absolutely, positively, without a doubt, refuses to open up a port and to open up anything in the firewall. They cannot talk to the CAP server. I picked up part 11 and said, what about law? Don't they understand? So he's now trying to get a DSL line just for his box. I had another station today say, well, we've got a couple, they consider them translators, but they're actually full Class A stations. And right now they simulcast the main station. He'd like to break them off because really what they simulcast for EAS has nothing to do with the county where they serve. And he says, we'd like to do that, but I have a problem up there in the mountain. He says, because that's where the box would have to go. He's got no internet access. He cannot get it. He can't get DSL, can't get a T1. They pick up off the air, so they don't even have an STL shot, and they couldn't get one if they wanted it because there's something in the way. They don't have 3G, they don't have 4G. He says, what do I do? So that's something we're going to bring to the commission and say, what do we do in this case? The guy wants to do the right thing, but he can't talk to the CAP server. How does he do this? How does he fulfill this part of the regulation? So that's that's what we're all about and what I'm trying to do. And I'm here to, like I said, start a discussion to say, okay, what are the problems you're having here in the Syracuse market or surrounding area if you're from the surrounding area? One other thing. The big thing with the FCC. I was at a meeting last week at the New Jersey Broadcasters Convention. Kelly Williams from NAB was there, and he said, talking to the commission recently, their big thing with the EAS: monitor assignments, monitor assignments, monitor assignments. Okay, and if you have a copy of the state plan, it's got a couple of pages with monitor assignments, and don't believe it. If you go to the New York State Broadcasters Association website right now, down near the lower left of the page, it says Emergency Alerts. If you click on that, we've got each section listed with a PDF. The top of the page for Syracuse, in red, lists the LP1 stations. Also tells who they monitor and gives their frequencies. So if somebody changed call letters and we don't know, which, gee, that's never happened before, you know what frequency it is. Then if you go down the list, on the left-hand side, all the stations are in alphabetical order. Find your station, tells you who you're supposed to be monitoring. If we had one guy today who said, well, yeah, I'm an LP1. Well, no, you're not. He thought he was an LP1. He wasn't on the list. And then, I monitor this. No, you don't. Here's who we have you listed as monitoring. If you need a monitoring assignment changed, it's real easy. Contact me. If you really don't have a clue who you want to monitor, I'll take a look at the list and say, okay, here's stations you can pick from. An LP1's monitor assignments will be a little bit different than people farther down the list, because the LP1 needs to pull information in from around the area, from outside. I'll come up with some suggestions. Basically, tell me what you can hear. If you can't hear those stations, then we punt. I've got one guy right now. He's in a bowl. Can't hear anybody. So he's went up to the transmitter site and said, "Oh yeah, I can hear this guy. He's putting it up on a subcarrier." Oh, he's got to pull the station. I mean, everything I gave him, he could not hear, but these were what he had to monitor. So he's going to pull it in on a subcarrier. So sometimes you have to be a little creative. Once you decide on a station, it works, you're hearing it fine. What we'll do is I send you an email saying, okay, we're going to change the assignment. You put that in your file. So if the commission walks in the door the next day, yeah, you're working with us. We then send a letter to the commission with a copy to you for the file. And you're done. And we also change it on the website. So what's on the website is current. You may see some pages up there that were put up in April. That's when I converted everything. And you may see some pages that a couple weeks ago there were a change made. Well, I don't update everything when I make a change. It's only if this area had a change, bang, it's current as of this date. If you have a question as to what's current, send me a note. Happy to answer it. It may take me a day to get back to you, but I will answer. Depends on whose transmitter my head is in that day. But anyway, what are we seeing as issues here in the Syracuse area? Anything particularly that's a sore point?
Yeah, where does Time Warner get their cue from?
That's a sore point with us too. The cable company is supposed to actually be part of the state process, and we're working on getting them involved.
I hope so.
There was an issue recently down in Binghamton where they had a tornado warning, and Time Warner, to this day, we still don't know what happened. It got into a loop. They sent the same alert 14 times on all the stations. Interrupted everybody.
We got it.
Well, they actually sent a note out that said, we usually complain you guys don't do enough for us. Now we're complaining you did a little too much. And it's funny. It depends on which Time Warner area you're dealing with. Some guys are decent. Some guys, like down in New York City when I worked at WOR, every month I'd get the same phone call. And the call would be, you didn't send a weekly test on such and such. Well, no, that's the week we sent the monthly. Well, yeah, but the rules say you have to send a weekly. Well, no, the rules say you don't have to send a weekly if you sent a monthly or activated that week. And oh yeah, if we sent a tornado warning that week, we probably wouldn't have done the test. Excuse me. Yeah, but the rules say, go read part 11 again. That's not what the rules say. So it depends on who you talk to over there. They also need to be part of the state plan so they know who to monitor. Some of the Time Warner people I found are, and not to pick on them, but all the cable companies, they just kind of, okay, we can hear these stations, we monitor. They should be monitoring one of the LP1s. Some places they don't. So we're trying to straighten that out, and we're trying to get that corrected as well. So we're working on that. Because we understand it's an issue. We're also working on working with the cable companies, and we're talking to the FCC, as well as several other states are, to stop this nonsense with having to interrupt all the local stations. Because you guys are on the air, let's take a snowstorm. You guys are on the air, you're talking about the snowstorm coming several days ahead of time. You're on the air 24/7 when the storm is hitting, and all of a sudden the EAS comes up and blows you out of the water. Well, that's not right. But you have to understand the cable company's standpoint. Their set of the rules say they have to do that, so they're going to do it, even though it makes no sense. So we're working on trying to find out if we can get a waiver process, or if they can modify the rules for the local stations. All we can do is, ask and see. But the commission is working on that. We do know that for a fact. They're working on coming up with some way to eliminate that local interrupt. So, there's a lot of things in the works here. They're eventually, and FEMA has also been talking about doing another national test. Well, some people say it was a failure, some people say it was a success. If you look at it strictly from what happened on the air, it was a failure. If you look at it from the other side and say, gee, this thing's never been tested before, it was a success because it pointed out where the problems were. And hopefully we've learned from it and we've discovered what it was. I mean, I tell you, in New York City, it sounded like the end of the world. And luckily, the LP1s in New York, we agreed to send a weekly immediately after the national test, which worked because Channel 4 was monitoring WOR. They grabbed WOR first, re-aired our audio, and their box did not react to the EOM, even though it was sent. We immediately sent a weekly, so they retransmitted our weekly, EOM unlocked them. So in that case it worked, and that's why we did it. So I understand that CAP is probably going to be a component of the next one, and they're also working on things. I've got a little application on my cell phone that I downloaded the other day. It's called Alert FM. Right now they're dealing with Weather Service data, but you can go in. It goes to the zip code level. It looks at the FIPS codes, but it says what zip codes do the FIPS codes actually deal with, and is that town actually, or zip code actually listed in the data stream? Driving over here from Rochester today, I got 2 flash flood warnings because it follows me. It knows where I am. Might be a handy tool for you to download if you're concerned and want to use it to make sure you're getting the right stuff. But at some point, they're going to be able to take it down to the zip code level. So instead of having to alert for the whole county, they'll alert for over here, which I think is a good thing. We also heard some things today. There have been some issues with a couple of LP1s where people just aren't paying attention, or things have changed at that LP1 where there's nobody there to call anymore after hours where there used to be. So there's concern from some of the stations in the market that they may not react because there are certain things they don't carry. Well, we've got to work with them to see. But the thing to keep in mind is that with EAS, the presidential emergency is mandatory. Everything else is voluntary. So if you're wondering what you should carry, what you should monitor, that's up to your station and station policy. In New York City, we carried tornado warnings because that was an immediate threat to life and property. We didn't carry a severe thunderstorm warning, a severe snowstorm warning, because WOR was talk radio. We were on the air talking about it constantly. So, we didn't, I look at it as telling you it's going to rain when there's a severe thunderstorm warning. They do pop up every so often, but with the format we had, we were constantly talking about it. We saw no need to do that. But tornadoes and other things, like a civil emergency, if there were a chemical spill on the GW bridge, we would have alerted for that immediately. We didn't alert for Amber Alerts because when we got something, the next newscast, the newscaster was on with it. And actually, we did have one Amber Alert last year where they caught the guy on the GW Bridge 10 minutes after it came out. We didn't EAS for it, but all the news stations immediately started talking about it on the air. Somebody saw it, somebody heard the things, wrote down the license plate, saw it, called 911. They caught the guy. Can't beat it. It does work when it works. And a couple other things, Hurricane Sandy. Well, we had some issues in New York, and you have people screaming, well, you didn't alert for Hurricane Sandy. No, we didn't alert for Hurricane Sandy. The TV stations were talking about it a week ahead of time. The TV stations 2 days ahead of time in New York City went wall to wall, and just about every radio station was talking about it, and the talk stations were just constant. Was there a reason to send off EAS tones? Probably not. And that was the same argument for 9/11. People were saying, well, the EAS wasn't activated. No, it wasn't. We didn't know it was coming. You know, when the first plane hit the first tower, we didn't know there was a second one. What are you going to EAS for? Every station in the city had coverage within 5 minutes after that happened. You know, and then the helicopters got grounded. So much for the aerial shots, but that was, I mean, that's part of the thing. Another thing, I also write a column for Talkers Magazine and RadioInfo.com. And I don't know if you saw it. Have we all heard of the PSA that's out?
Yes.
Yes. Well, myself and several other people around the country started screaming, well, this is illegal. We listened to it. There's a modified EAS two-tone. It sounds like a two-tone. The frequencies are actually different. You can't air it. And then the following day, the FCC came out with a statement. They're going to give you a 365-day waiver. Well, you know, I'm involved. One of the other things I'm involved with an independently syndicated network radio show on the weekend. We fill the local spot holes with PSAs. It's a well-produced PSA. It's a great thing to talk about, but I'm not going to put that in the show because people record the show and then tend to hold on to it just in case their satellite receiver dies or something else happens and they have to get audio on the air. Well, on the 366th day, if they take that show and air it, first things first, it's going to be an emergency situation. They're not going to call me to say what PSAs are in the show, and I couldn't answer that anyway. And they're not going to listen to it. So are they going to get fined on the 366th day if that PSA is in there? And the other issue that I have with it is, well, if an FCC official hears that on your air, how do they know it's the right one? You might find yourself defending it and having to prove that you have the correct one and didn't try to produce it in-house. I don't understand how this works. And they really haven't been clear on it, but I did get a somewhat sarcastic note from somebody at FEMA. You know, because of my alert, and I sent a note back saying, yeah, sorry, I stand. You know? And I'm recommending to my clients, don't air it. So, talk about it, great, but you know, maybe I'd like to put something like that on my air, on my station that says, you know, when you hear this tone, something bad's about to happen. Listen to W-Umpty Squad. I can't do that, but I can tell you, look at your cell phone. Okay. Well, during Hurricane Sandy, these didn't work in most parts of Manhattan. People, it looked like I was at the transmitter in Jersey. People tell me it looked like the 1940s. With one guy standing there with a radio and people gathered around him on street corners. So what worked? You know, we did. So do we have any issues in the Syracuse area? Anything you'd like to change? Yes, sir.
Well, one of my stations is WNTQ, which is one of the two LP1s. And we have just a few minor issues, one of which is monitoring assignments that is discrepant with the state plan. One of the stations that we're supposed to monitor is impossible to monitor.
Okay.
So we've picked, we voluntarily picked a station that we think is a good substitute.
Okay.
But I would like to contact you about that.
Oh, before we leave tonight?
Yeah.
I can go to the website. I was going to say I've got all the stuff on my computer, which
all right,
is
so
in my car.
I'd like to take care of that.
No, I take it back. My computer's over there. We can pull it right up.
One of the issues that came up in a discussion that was, I can't remember exactly, but there was a conference call after the national test. And it pretty much came up that because of all the translators and low powers and stuff that are now in the band, Syracuse, both LP1s, have a very tough time in getting anything from the western zone. Anything from Rochester, down the thruway. We used to be able to pick up Wham. We used to be able to pick up, I forget the name of the FM, VOR in Rochester and so on. And now these cannot be picked up. And they had mentioned, FEMA had mentioned on the call that they were thinking of just the way they had done in Binghamton, which was a very tough relay area,
Right.
southern tier, putting in a new PEP here in Syracuse. Are you aware of any further discussion on that? Or?
I'm not aware. I know they're still working on the program, and I know they're working it out, but I will ask and see what I can come up with.
Okay.
And see if we can at least come up with some type of answer, whether it's, gee, we don't know.
Right.
That may be the answer.
But that is one of the problems, is we really don't have a way of, we get BEE in Rochester, but sometimes it fades out, and sometimes it's there, and so the western tier, which of course is obviously important from Rochester to Syracuse, is something that we're not too well covered in.
Okay. So that's something we need to work
Yeah.
on.
The other thing is what I believe even Bud Williamson said was a mistake, was that our EAS area includes Oneida County, which is Utica's home base.
Okay.
So that used to cause all sorts of problems when we ran monthly tests. We started kicking off Utica, and Utica would kick us off, and all this stuff. So we voluntarily ceased that,
Okay.
and dropped that county from our TSA and so
Okay.
on. But
And let me see where that came from. If that came from the state, then we're going to have to work with them to get that moved.
yeah, but the state plan officially says Oneida is part of the Syracuse.
Okay. And it should be part of Utica.
It should be part of Utica.
Yeah, it was the Utica market didn't have its own home county. it had Herkimer and Ilion counties or whatever.
Yeah.
Or Herkimer and.
Yeah,
whatever
I
the
mean,
other one.
Utica sitting there right in the middle of Oneida County did not have
Yeah,
its own
yeah.
home county.
Oops.
Yeah.
Let me ask you a question.
Did that get fixed or no?
With the monthly test, how is that scheduled here? Does somebody schedule it, or is it just?
Yes, I get together with Todd Trupideris of Clear Channel, and we have collaborate on a monthly schedule. We alternate.
Mhm.
I'll do it maybe one night, and then one day, and then he does it the day, and it just ping pongs around. We try and do it during varying times on the daytime tests and so on.
Just so you know, if it'll make it easier for you, the weekly test is really the one that has to be random days and times. You can schedule the monthly test whenever you want to, and the reason for that is that way everybody knows it's coming. And like in New York City, it's usually the first Wednesday of the month, of the first full week of the month, and it alternates between all 6 entities who do it. And what we've also done was we've talked to the TV stations, so it tends to be the 1 p.m. and 1 a.m. hour where it comes. Because the TV stations, I guess, depending on the syndicated program, a lot of the syndicated programs, you only get one break in the hour, it's bottom hour. And if something happens in the chain and they miss it, they now have to wait till the next hour or do a weekly. Because especially in New York City, you do not interrupt anything on television. Too much money involved. And there's at least one radio show out there. WR carries it. It's the George Newry show. It's formatted similar to television for the breaks. The only local break besides coming into the top of the hour is on the bottom of the hour. So if they originate the EAS test, they do it coming out of the newscast before that show, so it's early in the hour. But the TV stations love it because then everybody's all on board and they're ready to do it. So you might want to consider, how far in advance do you do the schedule? Is it
We do it for the year.
okay? Is it published anywhere?
I don't know if it's published anywhere. I mean, we just have it on a spreadsheet that we both use. No one else. I think TV gets it. Yeah, I believe that it's coordinated with TV too.
Well, here's a thought. You might want to consider putting it up on the chapter website. Yeah, SBE 15 in New York has ours up on there. This way people have access to it, and the traffic managers tend to like you a lot better when that happens because they know it's coming, and they can make a space for it rather than get a spot blown out of the water if you're in syndicated programming. So, just a thought.
That's fine with me.
But good. At least we know somebody's doing it. There are some places I've been where, well, it just kind of happens. Okay, but who? Well, but it just happens, and oh boy. So we're trying to get a handle on that because, as at the State Broadcasters Association, we want to make sure everybody's participating and doing what they're supposed to, and unfortunately, we don't know a lot of this information. Like I said, in New York City, it's kind of if that schedule doesn't come out 2 weeks before Christmas, people are screaming, "Where's the schedule?" It's coming. Jeez. What we just tend to do is just change the entities because the times don't change. It's always the same. And our other caveat is that if there's a holiday, like if July 4th falls on Wednesday, we won't do it on Wednesday. Like this year, July 4th falls on Wednesday, so the test that week is on Thursday. Everybody knows.
July 4th this year is on
Thursday?
Today, this week.
I mean, well, maybe that was last year then. Anyway, but also, statistically, it's probably impossible. But if it is possible, if you look at the calendar, for the first full week of September to have 9/11 on Wednesday. We will, New York City, they will not EAS on 9/11. Discussion's ended. It'll happen on the 10th. It'll happen on the 12th. It will not happen on 9/11 because at the time we would do it, they're still reading the roll call over at ground zero. Don't want to do that. So, there is the flexibility. And what we've also done in the city, if an LP1 misses it, we had somebody who was having some problems with their box every so often. It would lock up. Yeah, happens. Unfortunately, a couple of times they sent their own monthly after the monthly went, and several people went, "Oh look!" The box went, "Oh look, new test." Boom, and out went a second one, which bent a lot of people out of shape. So we tell people, if you miss the monthly for whatever reason, box locks up, somebody doesn't hit the right button, somebody doesn't acknowledge it. If you have a manned situation, send a weekly and log it why you missed the monthly. That's what the commission's looking for. When I go in to inspect the station, I look at the logging. There's one station I inspected. It's actually near my house. I went in. It was like, oh my God, this guy's great. He prints everything out once a week, and he had a problem with his box. He had the UPS shipping labels. He had the tracking numbers. He had all the stuff off the web showing when it was delivered. It was like, what would you like to know about when this box failed? There it was. How can you fault the guy? Everything was great. And there was another one. They weren't receiving anything from the second EAS assignment. Turns out it wasn't working properly, and he's the guy who's going up now and putting in the subcarrier to make it work. So, I told him, I can't give you a certificate until we get this working, but you should have said something ahead of time. Put up a flag. If you don't remember me, call the Broadcasters Association. They'll put you in touch with me, or eventually there'll be a successor. They'll put you in touch with the successor. So just don't be afraid to reach out. Anything else? Yes, sir.
The satellite system, is there any future for that?
Well, let me ask you a question that I've been asking all the chapters.
It doesn't work.
Well, we know that. We've been thinking of saying, okay, let's recall it all for anybody who can still find it. There's some people who can't find it. Don't know what happened to it, can't find it. And if we distributed these primarily to the LP1s, would that be a decent idea to give them a direct input from the state and daisy chain it?
Well,
Is it?
I'd say if we can get the bird. I can't get the bird.
Okay.
I know, and I have tried. I've used aiming equipment and so on and so forth, and I cannot get that signal. Since they changed the bird,
Right.
The original one was great, because the bird was, I believe, at 180 degrees, which
Right.
was just practically over New York State. And once they moved over the Pacific with the size of the KU band antenna that they gave us, it does not come in. And from what I understand, also there's an adjacent satellite that's even more.
Yeah,
You know, it's
I've heard it's like 1 or 1.5 degrees spaced, which is
Right.
a problem.
Right, and it just blanks out.
We have talked also with the state, and right now it's a funding issue about changing to something. For example, New Jersey uses MNet. It actually works pretty well. WOR was a backup for New Jersey, and we had an MNet system. The dish, about that big. The trickiest part of it is making sure you're not looking at DirecTV when you aim it. That's easy to figure out. Plug a DirecTV receiver in. If you see something, guess what? But it works pretty well. Matter of fact, it's funny. On the FEMA test day, it comes through MNet before it comes out of the FEMA cap server. They get it, and it tends to go up and down before the SAGE reports that it pulled FEMA and got the test that way. So, we're talking about things like that with the state. Don't quite know what direction they're going in, but they want to make sure that that is CAP compliant. We talked about the present system, and they said, well, but that's not CAP compliant. It's like, well, yeah, but if you need to get the state message out, let's just make it an EAS message for now, just to make it work until the funding's in place, a decision is made. We also talked about possibly moving it to AMC8, which for the radio guys would be great. For the TV guys, not so much, because you guys don't look at AMC8. But our thinking with that was, at least for the radio stations, most radio stations pull programming off of AMC8, whether it's a top of the hour newscast, whether it's full programming or what. That dish is looked at, and if that dish has a problem, you know about it, and it's going to get attention. Where the present thing, it just kind of sits there and sits in the rack, and a bird takes up residence and nobody pays attention. So we are looking at a number of things. We are trying to figure out, and I told them, if you got one in storage, give it to me. I'll take it home and install it and tell you what I'm seeing. What's another antenna in the yard? My wife,
Take it off your roof.
she's ready to shoot me now.
I'll upload it for you.
So I don't have a full answer for you, but we are looking into that, and we're working on other things. But from what I've heard with the 1 degree spacing and everything else, no, it's not going to work, especially with the dish they have. You need something to tighten it up. I've written this down more than once in the last couple of days, so this will be it's a big technical issue. It's not just that it doesn't work and the state's not paying attention. It's a tech issue with it that obviously either wasn't thought out, or when they moved it, all of a sudden a new satellite appeared, which can't happen. And in that case, it's not their fault. But, anything else?
Do they make consumer EAS decoders or something that you can hook up to a radio or something that?
Nobody's doing that yet. The app I told you about, the Alert FM, part of their plan is when the FM chips start appearing in phones, is to be able to tap that and have it just constantly listening to it where you can't hear it. It'll be listening and have it go off on the EAS. So it's something that's coming, but it's not available yet.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking more of it for engineers as opposed to the general public, but either way.
Right, and that's a good idea, and it's a good confidence check for the station. Buy a consumer radio and see if it goes off. And if it doesn't, you have a problem. So,
Are we talking about when the station trips, the receiver would come on? I believe Oswego County at the nuclear power plants, within a 10-mile area in the ERPA zone, people have those receivers.
is it EAS based though, or is it?
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay,
I want to believe it is. I believe it is.
Because I've heard of that in other areas, but it wasn't EAS based. It was some other system. So,
It may be weather.
right. Yeah, it could be the weather.
But I know that they're alerted
Okay.
with receivers provided by the nuclear power plants. Terry Bennett is the girl to talk to in Oswego County. She wanted to be here at the meeting but couldn't.
In Oswego County, what? Emergency services?
Yes.
Emergency services, yeah.
Okay, I'll give her a call and see what it is. And you know, I had a question today from somebody, and actually this was a good question. He's involved. He's an advisor with a college station, and well, with a college who has a radio station, and their emergency people had said to him, you know, if we have a problem when we need students to not come in or we need students to go to the dorm because the weather's really bad or whatever, can we come up with a way to issue a FIPS code or something just for this area, just this immediate area? And the answer right now is no. But what they wanted to do is they wanted to equip, so they could send out an EAS alert on the college station only that says, okay, and they wanted to originate it from their office across campus, put in a phone line, so they could record a message, hit the button on a Sage box, for example, have it go to the station, have it just get decoded as part of the input, and the thing would end up on the air. You know, that this way the students didn't get involved, you know, saying, well, gee, should we air the, you know, bang, it's going to get aired. But there was no real way to do that without alerting the whole county, and if anybody monitored this station, I have to find out the call letters in the station, so we can see if anybody's monitoring them, to not set everybody off, because, you know, okay, there's no school today. The guy over there doesn't need to know that.
A lot of the colleges have gone to text and email-based emergency alert systems, because that's what all those kids, they don't listen to the radio.
Yeah, my daughter's college does that.
So if there's someone on campus, they've had a couple activations here where, you know, some suspicious this, that, or the other thing on or near campus.
Yep.
And they all had text messages and emails within a matter of minutes.
Well, this particular college, he also said they had a, they got a speaker system, which is IP based around the college, and it's got an IP link, but it also has an FM radio. And this is why they were thinking of it, because they can send out an IP alert. It comes out with an EAS two-tone on this thing, on these speakers that just start blaring, and they give you the message. But what they wanted it primarily for was to use it as an FM backup. If that IP link failed, bang, it'll whatever station it's tuned to. In this case, the college station, it would trip. So that was the primary reason. But you're right. The kids, they don't listen to the radio.
It wouldn't be a bad idea to have it as a backup.
They sit there. It's unbelievable. But I shouldn't complain. My daughter's a 4.0, so she can text as much as she wants. Anything else? Yes, sir.
One last question. I often wonder, I mean, we are an LP1, but yet I have no way of verifying or knowing if a county were to call up and say, we can't get a hold of anybody over at SYR, we have to activate an alert. I have no way of knowing if that person on the phone is legit. I don't even know if what would happen in a situation if it's a weekend or after 5 o'clock. I've had no communication with anybody in terms of how an emergency organization or civil outfit would get a hold of our station to even originate an alert if they wanted to.
That's something else we're working on with the state to find out how it's supposed to work, because in this day and age of Homeland Security, it's different than it was 10 years ago. I'm also on the SECC in Connecticut, and I'll tell you how they do it. Because it was like that when we started years ago. And the great thing in Connecticut was, when I started on the SECC, the Office of Emergency Management closed at 4 o'clock. 4 o'clock came, everybody went home. That was on Friday. Nobody was there get until Monday at 9. Well, okay, what happens when that chlorine truck spills on I-91? Well, call the local police. You're the Department of Emergency Management. Isn't this your job? We ended up getting them involved with the state police, because of course the state police is there 24/7. So it's a collaborative effort between those two, because if something happens, the state police should know. If it's something involving, let's say, a chemical spill, they need to alert the emergency management personnel, who then scrambles hazmat or whatever has to be done. and then gets the alert out that there's something going on, get out of the area, it's a chlorine spill, cloud coming your way, leave. And that might be how it's going to work. In New York City, with the mayor, they have a direct input to the LP1 stations, and they have their own Sage box. However, that being said, it was like, okay, now what happens if Verizon goes belly up because it comes in by phone line? Or what happens if something happens and they have to evacuate in Brooklyn, where their center is? Now what? There's a subway station right under there. God knows what could happen. In every LP1's control room in New York City, there's a red envelope, believe it or not. Because the mayor's office wanted to be able to activate out of the trunk of the mayor's car. And it was like, they wanted a Sage box mounted. And it was like, no, too easy to hack. How about you pick up the phone, we do it the old-fashioned way. This is the mayor's office. Our code is X umpty squat. They open the envelope. If it's umpty squat, they put the guy on the air. Actually, they record it so they can keep the message into the 2.5 minute window for EAS. And that LP1 will originate because all the LP1s are all tied together. And boom, out it goes. So if the state's not going to pick it up on the Department of Homeland Security level, maybe county by county or area by area, we need to come up with some method. Because you're right, you don't know who this guy is who's calling you. And the low-paid jock on the air, I mean, he's not going to know either, and he puts it on, and then the guy starts talking about a zombie apocalypse. Come on.
Or worse, nobody's home.
Exactly. And nobody can get a hold of you. Yeah.
That's
So
very
there's got to be a
interesting.
way for input. Excuse me?
Because we had a beautiful fire in a junkyard out in East Syracuse day before yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
Not a radio station touched it. The fire chief called 911, and we all got area calls on our 9 phones
Wow.
to close the windows and stay in.
Yeah, but you're right. That should have been put out on the air. And
It was nothing.
something else the Broadcasters Association is working on. Getting broadcasters not on equal footing, but to be considered a first responder. Which means that, if your transmitter's in trouble and that area is closed for whatever reason, if it's safe for you to go there, obviously if there's 20 feet of water and it's raging, they're not going to let you down, and you'd be crazy to do it anyway. Or if that's where the chemical spill is, you'd be crazy to go in there. That being said, if they just had the area closed off to keep people out of there, just to make sure they don't have a mob scene on their hands, there's no reason why you can't go to your transmitter. We're also working on a program such that if something happens here, Hurricane Sandy in New York City, major snowstorm up here, you need fuel, you are getting the message out, you need fuel for your generator, you need fuel for your news truck, that there'd be a way for you to do that and take a priority like a first responder can. So they're working on that through the legislature. I understand the governor likes it, I understand the legislators like it, but it's a process that has to work through. It's going to be picky as far as who gets, the chief engineer, for example, should have, or the transmitter supervisor, whatever, should have one of these passes. Does the general manager really need it? He can direct from home. The guy running the board needs it. Several of your announcers and news people need it to get that message on the air. The traffic manager doesn't need it. So that's something else that's in the works. It may not happen tomorrow morning, but it's something that's probably going to happen. And it's happened in several states already, if you haven't been following the news. The state legislatures in numerous states have said, and I think Ohio was the last one that did it, the governor signed a law making broadcasters a first responder. So, to get the message out.
It's a good idea.
Yeah. So that's other things that are being worked on. And unfortunately, that's about all I can report on things on the state level right now, because there's nothing else right now to talk about. Everything is in the works, and as part of this tour, like I said, I'm collecting data before I can say, okay, we need to do this, we need to do that, we need to do that. and then I'll be back in touch to say, okay, what do you think about this, guys? Yes, sir.
John was talking about that fire,
Yes.
which was a lot of black smoke. And who's at fault there? The fire department for not activating EAS? It did crawl on every TV station.
Yeah, they didn't touch
Close
it.
your windows.
It wasn't-
3, 5, 9, 10 all had it.
Yeah, well, that's probably because somebody got it on their phone and,
Well,
And alerted.
I'm sure all the TV
Monitoring
stations were
cameras.
there.
yeah, yep, that too.
Yeah, Channel 9 was
So
there.
let's just take it another step. Let's assume for a moment it was activated. Probably at that time on a Sunday, there's nobody at home.
No,
At any,
and
at any
there-
radio station.
There's got to be a procedure and a protocol. And as part of the state plan, that's something we're going to have to put in place and work with the state to find out what that should be. While
Would the county have activated?
I would think that, the county would have activated because the way the emergency process works in the background is that there's a fire at the dump. That gets reported to the fire department, maybe it gets reported to the police first, whomever. Well, let's say a cop saw it. He has to alert the fire department, who now, because it could be a hazardous thing, has to alert the county, who now has to alert the state, because hazmat may have to come out. So there is a chain of command. Why EAS wasn't part of that is a good question, which I'll come up with an answer to why and how to make it work.
Well, they thought the smoke might be toxic, so they wanted to let it.
Well, and rightfully so. And this is a perfect example of where it didn't work. And it didn't work because the broadcasters didn't do anything. It didn't work because the
Let's take it one
officials.
step further.
Okay.
Let's assume for a moment EAS did get activated by the county. I don't know that all of the, did you have that in your list of ones you activate on? Probably not.
I mean,
There is no county to LP1.
No, that would be that would probably be considered a civil emergency.
well, yeah, which we would relay immediately if there was
Right.
a
Well,
civil
where would it come
emergency. But the question is, where does
Yeah.
it come from?
Exactly.
Well, there's
So we got to
no-
find that out.
Is there supposedly some VHF links that the county has to,
There's supposedly
because we don't have any receivers along this?
there's supposedly a VHF network that the state has, but nobody seems to know the status of it. And we're trying to find that out too. Because if it exists, then let's use it. And let's put EAS data on it. So the guy at the county level, let's say that's where the alert really should come from in this case. So he can push a button and make that happen. Or if it becomes a state responsibility, then bang, bang, bang through the chain of command, state issues, but you still have to receive it somehow. So we're working on that, trying to figure out where that's supposed to come from, because for a fire here in Syracuse, it doesn't make sense for the station in Albany to start and come through the daisy chain this way across the state, because the people in Albany couldn't care less. People in Syracuse really care and need the information now, not after it gets relayed 10 times.
It probably sounds like this after it gets relayed.
So,
After 911, and I can speak from observation, some friends of mine who are installers, who work on tower erectors and mobile communications, that there was a massive influx of money, and there are a lot of sites that are primarily there for emergency services.
right.
Presumably, they're a part of this VHF network. Most of them didn't know what the equipment was going in. They just installed towers and coax.
Right, and maybe what it takes with this is, the states tend to
First
be.
mile, last mile.
Yeah, well, but the states tend to be cautious, and I'll use Connecticut again as an example. They had a VHF setup, and once again, it was great. There was no way to get the data to the radios. They fought for a number of years with the state police, and finally got a sub-channel on one of the state police data radios, and they're using it as voice, which is great, because that shows up at all these places where they have the VHF transmitters. Well, then they had to go to the next step. When somebody at emergency management pushed the button, nothing happened. I know the guy who looked at this thing, and they're also very cautious about their buildings. Someone like you, someone like me, someone like you, they don't want to let us in, and all of a sudden, one day they need help, and then they say, "Can you help?" Yeah, we offered, 25 times. This guy went in, he finally said, he was in the building one day and finally said, I've had enough of this garbage. Why doesn't this work? So he said, okay, well, the wire's coming out of the end deck. Oh, it goes to this punch block. Where's the punch block go? Threw a toner on it. Around the corner, there was a room full of punch blocks. Hey, great. Showed up over in the room. Okay, well, now it jumpers here. Where did it go? Well, it jumpered over here. Okay, where's that go? Tone it out, it was down at that end of the building. Okay, but then it jumpered back over there. So he found it over there. And next thing you know, it showed up back in that room right next door and went to the phone company. It was like, really? It was awful funny. After he put one jumper in going bang, bang, instead of going all around the world, it now worked. But, you know, this is what happens when people who don't understand how this stuff has to work starts doing it. Oh, yeah, it's audio will work. Yeah, but there's data encoded. You know, it becomes a little different animal at that point, as we all know. So, but yeah, no, we're talking to the state. We're going to see what the status is of the VHF, and then once we learn the status of the VHF, well, who's got it, and how does a signal get from here to here to make it do something? That part may not be in place right now, so we don't know. We're trying to find this out, and they're holding the cards right here, right now, and it's, you know.
It seems that the best localized state system that we have at this point is the NOAA Weather Radio, which comes out of Binghamton or whichever, and can seem to be accessed. It seemed that would be a very good, and that everybody has a weather radio in their EAS chain.
Right.
That seems like that's something that could be fairly narrowly targeted without having to hit the whole state at one time. Or
well, that's actually something else we brought up, and of course, as you can imagine, that's a political football as well. See, the problem with a lot of this stuff is it's political football, and it's like, you know, we need to put the politics aside and get the job done, because someone's going to die someday. You know, so someone near that fire is going to die because they inhaled that black smoke and wasn't aware, because the message didn't go out. And as part of our job as broadcasters, you know, we need to get the message out, but we can't get the message out unless we get the message. This, in another part of the state, this happened recently. There was a tornado warning that went out, and a tornado was spotted. And the National Weather Service screamed, hollered, and yelled that nobody issued the alert. And the LP1 said, we never got the alert. And then they found out that it was in the buffer in their end deck, and nobody hit the button to send. You know, the stupid human factor. You know, the human didn't push the button, and it didn't. So they found what the problem was.
It wasn't VHF propagation, it was SHF.
Right, exactly. Stupid human factor. Incidentally, for those who don't know, you know, this watch monitors WWVB. I'm sure you have WWV receivers in places. And WWV actually uses a data subcarrier that's amplitude modulated. When daylight savings time comes up, the stupid human has to set the switch. I've been out there. They showed me the switch. It's not automatic. The guy has to go out that morning and go click, so the system knows that when it hits midnight GMT, set the bit. It's like, and if he forgets, guess what's going to happen? You know, same thing in this case. You know, you're always going to have mistakes, but if we can minimize them and we start putting books together, or not books, but procedures, and somebody just forgot that step in the procedure. They thought they hit it, didn't do it. But you're right. We have to come up with a way. How does the message get from point A to point B? In the case of this fire, you're right. Somebody should have been alerted. Nobody was. And the TV stations had it because either they saw something, they heard it on the scanner, or somebody's phone went off because they lived near the thing and went, oh my God, hey, we need to do something about this. Well, that's not the way it's supposed to work. But, so, anything else?
Hey, Tom, on a statewide level,
Yes, sir.
is New York using the SUNYSAT and New York network for sending out statewide type alerts?
No, and I believe, I've heard a rumor someplace that's going away. Maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
They don't, and part of the reason is, and this used to drive us nuts in radio, because the governor would do something and it'd be up on SUNYSAT. Well, it's nice, we don't look at it. we look at AMC 8. You know, and no one, you know, they would put something out, and no one ever told us how to pick it up, and what type of receiver, and what size dish, and, you know, where to actually aim the thing, and, and nobody told us what bird it was on, and SUNYSAT. Okay, that's nice. But if that is something that SUNY has, and it's going to remain, well, maybe that's an alternative, like an alternative path, and utilize that on top of everything. I'm assuming all the schools can uplink to it?
No, they can downlink. There's a couple uplinks. There's an uplink at Buffalo. There's an uplink at Utica, Albany. I don't think there's uplinks in the north or in the south unless they're mobile. I know they have a mobile uplink, but I don't know what the status of SUNYSAT is now. They are still providing the New York Lottery to stations. I'm pretty sure that Channel 3 monitors SUNYSAT for the lottery from the Schenectady studios.
Is that a digital feed, or is that still
It's digital.
analog?
They're digital satellite service. They used to be 24/7, but then they've now cut back to feed only status. So the only thing I know, I check my receiver once a month just based on, you know, if it's 12 o'clock, 12:28, I turn it on and I can see the New York State, the bars from the Schenectady studio. I know that my KU receiver is still working. Other
Right.
than that, they don't broadcast anything on there. They have, and they do OTB. They got some
Right.
OTB they're running up there.
We'll ask that too,
Yeah, so.
because I'm.
It's all education.
Yeah, well, how, with that system, how many audio channels are on there?
I couldn't tell.
I'm
There's-
just curious,
no, I
because
mean,
if they have a spare
they've got a
audio
lot of,
channel,
I mean,
you know.
at least 2 channels per 2 channels of audio per channel that they have, and I think they had 7 running at one time.
Wow.
None of which, you know, they on an as needed basis they had those up.
Right.
So, but they had to scale that back a number of years ago because it just cost too much to keep the bird hot. You know,
Right.
Keep that going.
Well, we'll inquire about that too, and the possibility of using that as a path.
Well, it's definitely
So-
going to any station in New York that gets the lottery or watching it. You know, they have a receiver. Vinny, they still got a receiver here? Do you have a digital? Just the
No.
analog ones?
No, we never had a SUNYSAT receiver.
You had an analog one you could spin to it, but now it's
Oh,
digital.
we can spin the digital to it, yeah.
It has to be authorized anyways.
Yeah.
Okay.
Interesting. Well, next time we have an emergency, we'll have to invite Yolanda Vega along. Anybody else? Yes, sir.
That receiver that they use up at the nuclear power plants, the consumer receiver we're talking about,
Mm-hmm.
I think it's why they run a monthly test when they run a test to tell people why the sirens are on.
Right.
So I think they need the 86953 tones to activate those radios.
Okay, so that might work
So
off
maybe
two
it's
tone then.
That's how I think it works.
Okay.
But Terry would.
Yes. You know what? I think you're right, because if that's what they're using, those radios have been around for a while, because there was a lot of controversy when we went to 8 seconds. Yeah. Some people, it's not going to work. And the stations near the plant screaming, we're not doing 25 seconds anymore, period, and you figure it out. Yeah, I think you're right. So, anybody else? Going once, going twice, just going. Hey, if I'm somewhat out of business cards, unfortunately, I threw a whole bunch in the car. I can't find them. And I know I put them in the car because I tripped over something coming out of the office when I grabbed them. Vinny will post where to find me, but I'm Tom Ray at tomrayconsulting.com. If you need something, don't be afraid to send a note. I will get back to you. And actually, that's the best way to reach me. I'd give you a phone number, but half the time I'm not going to answer the phone because I'm in the middle of something. So, and I'll obviously see you all at the convention. Hopefully, we'll have more answers by then and can put on a real good presentation. And it'll be statewide rather than just talk to Syracuse, talk to Binghamton, talk to So, anything else I can answer? Yes.
Were you ever at the WOR Carteret setup?
No, I wasn't I wasn't there that long ago. Carteret was taken apart in 1967.
Okay.
And the new site in Lyndhurst went on the air actually in '66 for testing, and then in '67. It's an interesting history when you start getting into it to see what they went through and how they did it. And I actually had a listener. Part of the problem with OR is we didn't have much of our history, and the reason being was that RKO General, who owned it, got in trouble with the government. That's why they divested themselves of the licenses. Right before Buckley bought it, they sent everything they had to the Library of Congress, and it hasn't been cataloged. So I actually had a listener. He was going through his mother's stuff when she passed away, and he came across a scrapbook with a bunch of WR stuff in it, and in there was them collapsing the towers in Carteret, newspaper clippings, and it was like, this is cool. What's actually cooler, when WR's 90th anniversary came up last year, I was trying to find some history. So I called the Library of Congress, got in touch with a guy who was actually into radio history, and he says, well, he hasn't been cataloged. I know where the stuff is in the warehouse. He says, I could arrange to have, if you want to come down, I can come up with a way to spend the day with you. I can't let you touch anything. You can take pictures. I said, great. And of course, a lot of stuff intervened between then, and about a year later, he called me. He says, you're not going to believe this. He says, the WR collection just showed up. There were 80 pallets. He says, he's in my hands right now. I'm holding a manual from a Western Electric transmitter from 1936. I said, oh, that has the Carteret transmitter. He had blueprints. He had staff lists. They have memos. They have scripts. They have transcriptions, and they're just starting to catalog it. And if it's any consolation to me or anybody else that was involved with OR, and the NBC collection's in the same state, they haven't cataloged all of it yet either. They've got transcriptions. They got scripts. I mean, they got stuff Bob Hope scratched things out on from NBC. I mean, the stuff they've got. One of these days, I got to get down. I really do. I got to go down to DC and see some of this stuff. But no, they put Lyndhurst on. They took Carteret apart. Then we built the new Rutherford site because they wanted us off the land. Tell you a couple of quick construction stories you'll all find amusing. The state of New Jersey came up with this great idea. They were going to build a mall and an indoor ski slope called Xanadu in the Meadowlands. Yeah. Well, if you ever seen that, yeah. But if you ever see that building, and of course the money dried up, and they have this building which is being used for nothing. It is the ugliest thing you've ever seen. My description of it, it looks like the 1970s exploded. I mean, that's the color scheme, and it's just horrendous. But when they were building the thing, they came over, because we were building OR, and they came over and they said, well, what do we have to do with the cranes and stuff? They were 500 feet from the WEPN towers. WEPN is 50 kilowatts. The first thing, the best piece of advice I gave them, on the weekend and on a holiday, do not leave the crane up. Leave it flat. Well, of course, one holiday weekend came, and there's the crane. Everybody came back Monday morning at 7 o'clock, and they all left at 7:05 because all of the nylon pulleys on the crane had melted. They had to take the crane apart. With our build, we had, they put a crane up right in front of the old WR site one day. Once again, about 500 feet from the towers. They come running down to the transmitter building. Oh my God, we're getting burned. I said, did you do what I told you? No. Ground stake. Got a sledgehammer down there? Yeah. Went down, pounded a ground stake in, took a pair of jumper cables and went, try it now. Well, that's it. Don't leave the crane up. You're detuning my array. We had other issues down there. The first guy who ran the first catering truck down there when the whole project started, and because that whole build was because the state wanted us moved. The old WR site was built on a toxic dump, and they wanted to clean it up. So they were going to build 2 golf courses, several hotels, condos, blah 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 blah. That dried up too. But the guy who had the first catering truck is, I think, still sitting in federal prison because the feds showed up one day and wanted to investigate his truck. He had a briefcase in the back of the front seat with $80,000 in cash in it. The first guy who was head boss on the whole thing was, I think he's out, but he was in federal prison because he was shaking down everybody on all the projects. This was also the guy when they started the project. We're having dump trucks of dirt brought in. I can't tell you how many, we lost count. Anyway, we have dump trucks of dirt being brought in. It's a swamp. Across, there's a nice lagoon now, but you couldn't tell that because of all the growth. They're going to start the project, and they had state officials there, and they want to have a splash. Take that bulldozer and get in there. The guy said, it's going to sink. I don't, just get that bulldozer and get it in there. Takes it in. They bring in a crane to pull the bulldozer out. Guys, they're bringing out the oak pads. Forget the oak pads. Pull it out. I can't pull. Pull it out. Okay. Boom. We're across the street dying. But the classic one. The developer was responsible for the fill material for the WR transmitter site. And we were putting the roads in out of Tower 1. And Tower 1, you have to go down the railroad track right away. And these dump trucks are coming in. Now, these guys have, 10 tons of stone in them? Crushed stone. And the guys on site from the big project were getting a little perturbed because there wasn't a union driver, these guys. And there was one guy, I went back about 5 times, he told him, don't come back. And of course he kept coming back because when the boss says you're taking it there, you're taking it there. Well, the 6th time he saw him come back, truck goes around, he's coming around the railroad bend. Guy gets in his pickup truck, takes off after him. And the dump truck had to stop to allow another dump truck to come out because they had just dumped some stone. Well, this guy pulls up, screeches up behind him in his pickup truck, gets out with a 2x4 and starts wailing on the cab. Now, I just told you he parked behind the truck.
Yeah.
Guy in the cab, well, he was unperturbed. He just went click. Whoosh. I'm at the building and I saw this. I'm dying. I am in stitches. My cell phone rings. I had a guy on a backloader spreading the stone. He calls. He says, "Tom?" I said, "Yeah, it's Joe." I said, "Yeah," and he hated this guy. He's, "Well, John has a problem." I said, "I saw it." He says he wants me to dig him out, and I said, "Hey, Joe, it's 2:00. He goes, "Yeah, I know." I said, "You're on my time till 4." He goes, "Yeah." I said, "I got to get the project done." He says, "Yeah." I says, "Tell you what, at 4:00 you can go ahead and start." I says, "But you don't charge me for the OT." I said, "But you can use my machine," because I had rented the backloader. This guy walked around, it was 1.5 miles. He walks around. Bye. You should have thought of that before you were. And then, of course, there was the culvert we put in, where they start working on the culvert. Pickup truck with 2 guys pull up. Guy gets out. "Who's in charge?" "Me." No, who's putting the culvert in?" "I'm a VP with the company. Technically, I own the site. Therefore, and I'm also the contractor of record because we self-contracted. So I'm in charge. What's the problem?" "This guy has a problem." "Okay, who's he?" "He's the guy who should be doing this job." I said, "Well, did he bid on it?" "No." I said, "That's why he's not doing the job." He's a wise guy. He says, "I'm going to get the rat." They put up a rat, like in the city. And I'm looking around. Now, keep in mind, we're only 6 miles from the city. We're in the middle of a swamp. And I'm looking around. There's nothing there. I looked around. I said, "You're going to bring the rat?" He goes, "Yeah, I'm going to bring the rat." And I said, "Okay, I'll be nice. I'll run you an extension cord. Don't bring your generators. Bring the rat. Who's going to see it?" Gets in the truck, takes off. We had a great time with these guys. But I tell you, that Xanadu thing with they used to have weekly measurements done over there by a reputable company who did RF measurements to make sure people weren't overly exposed to RF from WEPN. It was classic. It really was. And then the building is just sitting there, empty. With weeds growing all around it. And a construction company sitting there doing this because they got nothing to do because there's no funding except to pay them. I'm going to go over there sometime. They watch TV, they drink beer, it's great. Anyway, thanks, guys. If you guys need me, please don't be afraid to reach out. That's why I'm here. And by the way, I am running for board in for SBE, so, you know, I'm damn glad to meet you, vote for me in July.